Today there is no sermon prepared. Well, like there ever is. But Tuesday I said, well, it's out here. I think it was Tuesday I was out here. I was working in the hallway and thinking about stuff. I said, we haven't had a time in a while where I just sat up here and let you guys ask questions. And so that felt right. And then I came back out here Thursday and was working in the hallway and thought about that some more. And yeah, it feels pretty good. That's a good idea. And then Friday I was out here mowing the grass and I said, yeah, that's what we're going to do. And so 3 days of thinking on that, and 3 different times it felt like it was a good idea. Because, for me, the last few weeks we've been talking about some pretty heavy stuff, a little bit different sometimes, but once again, for me, what's different? Thought maybe there might be some questions, some things that maybe we heard that didn't quite sound right, or some things that maybe we wanted to hear a little bit more of an explanation on, or just some random things that we're thinking about and want to talk about. So that's what we're going to do today. What I call question and response, because I'm all out of answers. I haven't had any answers in a long time, but I do have some responses to some questions. Take a couple minutes if you haven't thought about something, or if something comes quick to your mind. But what are some questions or some things that... Now, once again, we're not talking about questions about what the church is going to do or how we're going to keep the church going, or, we're saying spiritual questions, biblical stuff, stuff that we're wrestling with in our daily life about God, God's existence, our faith, what we believe, what we don't believe, that kind of thing. Not logistical, financial, stuff like that. So, take your time. Once again, I got trained by a Quaker, so I can be perfectly fine just sitting here for the next 45 minutes. Some of them still exist. There's some faith traditions kept those in the Bible, but you can find a lot of them. There's one, the Gospel of Thomas, that floats around. That's still used quite a bit. They're still around. And like I said, some Christian traditions still use, you think of what is called the Catholic Bible. The Catholic Bible contains what we call the Apocrypha, which are a collection of Old Testament scriptures that aren't included in the Protestant Old Testament. But they still, so if you go to a Christian bookstore and you buy a Catholic Bible, there's going to be books in there that aren't in ours. And so they're still around, and people still use them for different things and that kind of thing. Right. So in the Jewish tradition, they have the Talmud, and the Talmud it's not. You can't go to the store and buy a Talmud. It's not a book. It's a collection of books. And it's decades and centuries of rabbis arguing in these writings. And so there's a lot of things like, did Cain kill Abel with a knife? Because all we have on ours is that Cain killed Abel. Well, in the Talmud, there's a little bit more exploration of what Cain did. So Cain was a worker of the ground. And so would it have been possible for him to have had a knife that he could have pulled and used to kill Abel? And so there's a debate in the Talmud about how Cain killed Abel. Did he smash his head in with a rock? Did he hit him with some sort of gardening tool? Or did he use a knife and kind of stab him in the back? Because in a lot of our iconography of the story of Cain and Abel, you see Cain with a knife coming at Abel with his back turned. But where is that ever found in Scripture that he killed him with a knife? And so So like I said, the Jewish tradition, they have the Talmud, which is extra outside of the Bible, and then like I said, different, like the Eastern Orthodox tradition, they have books that we don't use. Catholics have books that we don't use, and so they're around, and there's different ways to get more information about these people that aren't included in our scriptures for various reasons. Does that make sense? Yeah. And then, because like I said, there's a lot of things written around that time, and there's more than 4 Gospels. They just included those 4 for various reasons, and some people say, well, those are the 4 that were inspired by God, and the rest weren't. Or how many books do you have to include that say the same thing? 4 is enough, and those 4 are different enough that shows there's some disparity. There's some differences between the 4. How many of those do we need to show that maybe the story isn't from one observation point? There's 4 different ways of looking at the gospel that all start the same way and all have the same middle and all have the same end, but they're different perspectives of looking at it. And so how many of those do we need to include? Like the Gospel of Thomas is literally just the red letters. So if you ever find the Gospel of Thomas, all that the Gospel of Thomas includes is just everything that Jesus said. So if you go through in the red letters of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, that's the Gospel of Thomas. And so, there's no stories, there's no anything from Peter, there's no background. It's literally just what Jesus said. And Thomas, apparently, we just wrote down everything Jesus said and put that into his book. And so that's we found that was been found in some ancient monastery or something like that. So yeah. Is there anything else? Can be the only question we have. I'm just saying. Now's your chance.
Well, I think you respond to my question on Tuesday.
Any question? Hold on. I'm not always that good at responding to text messages.
No, okay, so my question was, since Jesus didn't take sides, all right, we go to the question. So the sermon last week does take sides. He's always down the middle, but so my question was, did Jesus preach against the Pharisees and then some preaching against the modern day church? You're not preaching against that, so you just go around teaching against the Pharisees. And so your response was?
I responded to that.
Yeah, you did respond.
So the first point is Jesus didn't take sides. That's not true. Jesus exists in a dimension that doesn't have sides. There are no sides. So if we think about our lives are defined by an infinite number of binaries, right? And so when you look at the Garden of Eden, there was originally one binary. You have a multitude of trees, the tree of life, and you have one tree, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That's the only binary that was supposed to have existed, because we were supposed to have chosen the multitude being singular, meaning there are no sides, there's no binaries, there's no left-right, there's no center, there's no offense and defense, there's no nations, there's nothing dividing anything. All things are unified, one, humanity. All of humanity is one, instead of male and female and Jew and Gentile and all the different binaries that we've created. We chose the binary of knowledge of good and evil, which is in itself a binary, which then creates an infinite number of binaries. Right? So now everything in our life is the point of everything in our life is to pick a side. Whether what team you're going to like, what religion you're going to follow, what person you're going to vote for, what city you're going to live in, what state you live in, everything is divided into all these different divisions. And that's the dimension in which we've chosen to live in. That's the dimension of the world. But the point of Jesus Christ coming into the world, showing us, guys, you don't have to live in this dimension anymore. You don't have to live in this world of constantly needing to be on a side and hoping you're on the right side and then defending your side as being right. The objective is for you to turn to me, deny yourself, pick up your cross, and follow me into the kingdom, which, once again, we can change that language to what I would say is a different dimension. It's a different way of living. Into my kingdom, my dimension, where there are no more binaries. We're all one. There isn't a side to be on. So it's not that Jesus didn't pick a side. Jesus is showing us a reality that doesn't include sides. So when Jesus is preaching and Jesus is teaching, it's not what you're saying is wrong and what I'm saying is right. You're showing us, you're preaching and teaching from one way of life, which there is a wrong and there is a right. I'm showing you a way of life that is unified. There's unity, there's harmony, there's no division. There's no longer Jew nor Gentile, slave nor free, barbarian or Scythian, but all are Christ and Christ is all. Right? And so that's the hard switch for us to make in our brains, because we have been so conditioned to live in the binary. Everything in our life is this dualistic thinking, because we've been given this dualistic mind of the knowledge of good and evil. So every decision I make, it's either good or bad. It's right or wrong. Every conversation I have, it's defending a position that's right against a position that's wrong. And so that is exhausting. And we're looking at our world of people that are just so exhausted. And right now you have this thing where people are exhausted by the fact that they're constantly having to choose. And if I don't believe that everybody should have to get a vaccine, then all of a sudden I'm storming the Capitol on January 6th. And all of a sudden, if I think that everybody should get a vaccine, then all of a sudden I'm marching with Antifa. It's either one extreme or the other. And that's insane to me. Because I'm not storming the Capitol, and I'm not marching with Antifa, and I feel if you want to get a vaccine, get it, and if you don't, don't. Right? So hold on. So removing all these binaries, because it's so exhausting, constantly having to be on a side and then defending that side. Jesus didn't take sides because Jesus existed in a reality that didn't have them. Your way of viewing things is right for you. Once again, as long as it's not destructive and hurtful. You know, we can think about a guy like Warren Jeffs. Warren Jeffs' belief system, we can say, is wrong, right? Marrying 14-year-old girls, that's wrong. Categorically, we can all agree that that's wrong. Having 57 wives, we can just say, you know what, that's not right. But once again, if your belief system is inclusive and loving and you know, isn't hurting people, good. I'm glad you think that way.
Added into that, do you think people wanted to table and kicked out people selling sacrifices, or do you think he went around and did that all the time? Do you think when he traveled around, he had the story of flipping the tables and kicking traders out, saying, you know, kind of thieves, you know? So, do you think that was one time he just mentioned? One, and I think it's taken to the story one. So I feel like you go with that. He's going around town. These guys are making their money. You got this guy's going around flipping over tables, telling people, why are you doing it?
So, okay, we can look at that story historically as a literal event that took place. And as St. Augustine would say, literal interpretation is the lowest form of meaning. Right? So we can now look at that story as some sort of metaphor or allegory of something else, right? And that's what we talked about a few months ago, where Jesus cleans the temple. But Jesus never got mad at the temple. 1 Corinthians 3:16 says, I am God's temple. So here's a story about how Jesus came into the world to clean me. And he wasn't mad at me when he did it. Because all of these binary decisions that I'm constantly forced to make has made God's temple, me, a den of thieves and robbers. And Jesus comes in to clean me. But he's not ever mad at me. So once again, we can look at the story. Well, Jesus did this. Okay, well, once again, it's a story. Is it a historical event that took place? Probably. Right? But why are we still telling that story today? And it has nothing to do with the fact that Jesus got mad and kicked out pigeon dealers. We have that story today to show us that Jesus didn't get mad at the temple. So, once again, it's shifting a way of thinking of worldly, this is what happened, this is why it happened, this is how it happened based upon my position, or what am I supposed to see in this story that changes the way I see all the other stories? Because, once again, Jesus calls us to repent. The word repent literally means change the way you see. Jesus came into the world to literally change the way we see the world. Because every way in which we look at the world, we see it binary. Jesus is saying, stop seeing it that way. See it this way. Unity, oneness. Everybody's different, but we're all one. Everybody's different, but we're all the same. Mystery. I wouldn't say he's teaching against it. He's showing a different way. This is what you're teaching. Let me show you a different way of teaching. It's not that your way is wrong. It's this is what you've been taught to teach. They had him killed.
Something was going against the grain there.
Well, once again.
The money from these people were coming in and they're buying my pigeons and sacrificing or my toads and whatever. Now you're messing with
Toads, pigeons.
Oh yeah, I'm sure there's varieties.
Well. Yeah, but toads weren't used in sacrifices, ritual sacrifices. Right. I'm just saying, they sold pigeons because pigeons were used in the ritual sacrifices at the temple. And so, once again, it was a way for people to be able to buy their forgiveness, right? And so, once again, it's not like it's moving outside of that. What Jesus is preaching is right, and what they were preaching is wrong. That for me to be able to say that is what I used to preach was wrong, and what I'm preaching now is right. And I would never say that. What I was preaching before was what I was preaching from where I was and what I knew. And then, as I matured and grew, I began to see things differently. Right? So I would never say that any pastor who's going to preach more what I would call fundamentalism, and they're not wrong. They're doing what God has called them to do, because once again, there's a reason why people need to know that. You can't know grace until you know the law, right? We had to have the law. We had to have the teaching of the Pharisees. We had to have what they were doing so we can look at that and say, oh, that makes sense. I know what it means to live under law. Now let me go live under grace. You can't know grace until you know law. So it's not that what they were teaching was wrong. It's okay, Jesus, this is what y'all been teaching for 1,000 years, but now I'm here to fulfill the law. Once again, I'm not here to wipe it away. I'm to fulfill the law. I'm fulfilling your teaching. And now showing you what's to come next.
Like 10 more things. Jump in and ask him something for like 6 hours.
We don't have 6 hours today.
That's what I figured either.
But does any of this make sense to anybody, or do I just sound like a crazy person? Right.
So, living in that, how do you not, you have sides now, because everyone chose to be under the tree of the people and not to be, no side is all that, So, how, given that choice, how do you, when you're in that, good and evil, one side, two sides, good, bad, whatever, what would God want you to do? Would He want you to not choose anything and just live and keep it? Or would He want you to defend yourself?
So when they came to, I saw this thing that really made me upset this week. There's a lady speaking at some conference, and she said if Jesus had an AR-15, he would still be alive today. If Jesus had an AR-15, he would still be alive today. Meaning that Jesus was so weak and powerless that only a man-made weapon could have saved his life. Jesus knocked out 1,000 men with 3 words. Whom do you seek? 1,000 guys with weapons and spears and torches come to arrest him. Whom do you seek? Jesus of Nazareth. I am he. And all of them were instantly knocked out. Okay? The next scene, Jesus is in handcuffs. Peter used a weapon to defend Jesus and to stop him from being arrested. And Jesus said, stop. Put your weapons away. Glued his ear back on. I don't know if he glued it, but he put it back on, right? The Apostle Paul says in Galatians, if I am to preach circumcision, why would I still be persecuted? Peter betrayed Jesus, denied him 3 times, still died for the cause of Christ. Paul died for the cause of Christ. None of them were willing to compromise the teachings of Jesus, even though they were human and even though they were perfect. They could have. Jesus himself could have stopped himself from being killed. He chose not to. So we have the right to defend ourselves, or we have the right to stand with Jesus. And so when I stand with Jesus, there is no defense for me but Jesus. And that's the side that I want to be on. If the day comes where I'm going to be arrested for preaching what I preach, I'm not going to fight back. Here, take me. If the day comes where they're going to murder me for what I preach and what I teach, I'm not going to change what I preach and what I teach. We could continue to adapt to the ways of the world, right? Which is what happened when Rome occupied the church. Right? They said, here, we want you to proclaim your allegiance to the Roman government. No, you're dead. Okay, fine, you live. And then we began to compromise the Christian faith to appease the Roman government, to the point where it got watered down. There's no power left in it. Right? Luckily for us, there were those who were saying, you know what, we're not going to give our life, and we're not going to bow down to the Roman government. We're going to flee out into the desert. We're going to take the oracles of God, and we're going to go hide out and protect them and keep them alive. And luckily they did. So we can see now what the way of Jesus was prior to the Roman occupation and prior to Rome rewriting Christian history prior to the Roman occupation. Right? And those people risked their lives to do that. And so, yeah, we live in this world that is the right side and left side and this choice and that choice. Because we continue to say that's the world we want to live in. And this is why Jesus is sitting here waiting for us to show up to build his kingdom. Because the kingdom starts building and getting built when we say, you know what, we're going to stop living according to the ways of the world. We're going to repent and come into the kingdom of God. We're going to move into that new dimension or kingdom, however you want to say, whatever language works better for you. But as long as we continue to adapt and live according to the ways of the world, as long as we continue to say, God, make us like them, nothing's going to change. The world's going to continue to do what it does. And we can continue to get mad. Well, it's the Democrats' fault, or it's the Republicans' fault, or it's the Chinese fault, or it's the Russians. No. It's our fault. We're continuing to live according to these divisions. We're continuing to not say, God, make them like us. We're saying, make us like them. God, give us a king. Appoint for us the president who's going to save us, instead of allow us to bring you back into the world to save us. We don't trust him. We don't believe in him. He's not enough for us. So we continue to think that I have to have all these guns in my closet to protect me when the police come and raid my house for being a Christian. Find that story of Jesus. Because once again, we hear when Samuel is pleading with the Jews about a king, what does he say? He says, he's going to make your kids instruments of war. We hear Isaiah say, turn your weapons into instruments of life. You know, your swords into plowshares and spears into pruning hooks. We read last week in Psalm 46:10. Where's it at? I'm in 44. Where's 46? There's 46. God is our refuge and our strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth should change, the mountains slip into the heart of the sea, and the waters roar and foam, the mountains quake at its swelling pride. There's a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy dwelling place of the Most High. God is in the midst of her, she will not be moved. God will help her when morning dawns. The nations made an uproar, the kingdoms tottered. He raised his voice and melted the earth. The Lord of hosts is with us, for God, the God of Jacob, is our stronghold. Come, behold the works of the Lord, who has wrought desolation in the earth. He makes wars to cease to the end of the earth. Right? Jesus said, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God. In Proverbs, when it's talking about the Holy Spirit of wisdom, it says, all of her ways are peace.
So, you just said Jesus said, blessed are the peacemakers.
Yep.
So, he's already talking of division, because if you have peacemakers, then you have warmakers.
Well, once again, we have the world, which is war, which is division, which is chaos. And he's saying, blessed are the peacemakers. Blessed are the people who are willing to not pick a side. Because a peacemaker can't be on a side. What's that? I'm not on a side.
Well, this is where my difference comes in, because when you're the peacemaker, maybe you have to go make that peace, because the devil's always doing bad things to cause strife. So at that point, you have to end the devil in the devil's way. At that point, again, I'm just going to use your little bit of opinion here. You don't see patriots out burning cities down and taking stores in and looting and doing that.
Well, we did. We called it the Boston Tea Party, because that did happen.
Well,
okay.
That was
okay.
a revolution because we were under tyranny.
Okay. So that rioting and looting and burning things down was okay, but this one is bad.
Freedom.
Okay.
Because at that point we were working under
right.
those antics.
So let's stick to spiritual things, right? And so if we look at the world spiritually, right? What is Jesus calling us to? Jesus is calling us to a way of nonviolence. Jesus is calling us to a way where we don't use violence to solve problems, right? And so if we live in these, where we have these divisions, where you're on one side or the other, you can't be a peacemaker, because if I'm on this side, I have no credibility with this side. So this side will not see me as an ally in peace if I'm on this side. So in order to be seen as a peacemaker, I have to say, I'm not agreeing, I'm not playing on either one of your teams. Here's what your team is doing wrong. Here's where your team is wrong. Here's where your team and your team agree. Can we start there, right? And so once again, it can happen. Right, because we can sit there and say, well, it's not going to happen, and we need Jesus to do it, but Jesus says, greater things are you going to do than the things that I did. Right? You believe in me. You believe in the works that I do. You are going to do greater things than I did. But we sit around here and say, I'm not good enough to do anything. I'm not strong enough. I'm not capable. I can't do it. I'm not worthy. I don't deserve. I'm no good. I'm nothing. I can't fix anything. And as long as all of us continue to think that way, we're right. One person standing, the story in Ecclesiastes, where one old wise man stood in the middle of the city and saved his town by choosing peace. It can be done. But it's going to take more than just one of us to say, you know what, I'm done. It's going to take all of us coming together and saying, you know what, I'm tired of the media trying to separate us. I'm tired of the world telling us that we live in these divisions. Once again, I've told you guys the story of when the Urban League, I was working with the Urban League, and we were doing these dialogue and dines where we were bringing Republicans and Democrats together, and we're talking about very divisive things. We're talking about gun laws. We're talking about gay rights. We're talking about education, things that are very polarized. uprising, and NPR found out about what we were doing. NPR, National Public Radio, found out what was happening here in Elyria. They came to the event, and they left halfway through because nobody was fighting. Literally what the guy said. He goes, there's no story here. Everybody's just talking. Because we're not as divided as we think we are. We don't hate each other as much as we think we do. And so if enough of us say enough is enough, I'm tired of living according to the ways of the world. I'm tired of living by the standards of the world. I want to live by the standards of Jesus. I want to live by the ways of God. I want to become the image in which God created me to be, as opposed to the image in which the world told me I am. And once all of us begin to see it that way, now we can affect change. Now we can start bringing people together. One crazy idiot in Elyria saying these crazy things isn't going to do any good. But if a bunch of us, if all of us in this room started saying, you know what, we're done. I'm not picking sides anymore. We're going to come together, and we're going to work together. We can do some things in our community. We can affect change here. Not political change, spiritual change. I'm not worried about getting people better houses. I'm not worried about lowering gas prices. It's $67 to fill up my car yesterday in gas. Who cares? It's not my money anyway. I don't care about gas prices. I care about your life. I care about who you are. I care about your spiritual future. Not the physical stuff. I don't care about any of that. I care about loving you. And I care about loving you so much that you don't have a choice but to I know how irritating I am. I know I'm annoying. I know I'm a lot. But I'm going to love you so much that you're going to love me anyway. I can't stop loving this guy. This guy drives me crazy. But he just loves me so much I don't have a choice. Tell me your family didn't do that with me. Your family was so annoyed by me, and I kept showing up, and I kept showing up, and I kept showing up, and eventually even your brother loves me, I think. Right? There was a time where he wouldn't even look at me. Now he jokes with me, he talks with me, he shows up in church a couple times. All I had to do was just annoy him. So, once again, we can continue to have this defeatist mindset of, well, the world is just so broken, what can we do about it? There's nothing we can do. Or we can say, you know what? Jesus came into the world to change it. Jesus died on the cross to give us the ability to change the world. And we can say that that wasn't enough. We can say that whole scene of him dying on the cross didn't mean anything. It was meaningless. Or we can say, you know what? There was some power in his death. There was power in his resurrection. And we can start living out of the power of his resurrection and start living resurrected lives ourselves, or we can just sit here waiting to be resurrected. I've already been resurrected. That old me is dead. He was in the grave. He's gone. That girl that I was talking to yesterday, we were talking about the story. I have the memories of that guy. That guy doesn't exist. I was telling the story yesterday when Daryl Campbell was he was at Elyria Hospital. He was having a lobectomy when he first had lung cancer, right? And I'm down in we're all, Grace and Debbie and their friends, and we're all down in the cafeteria eating, and all of a sudden, I guess the doctor, I saw a guy. So there's this guy I used to work with at Lone Star. And I'm talking to this guy at Lone Star, and he's just all going on and on about me, because when I worked at Lone Star, we had the prettiest wait staff in the world at Lone Star. Our general manager was a huge pervert. He only hired beautiful girls with great bodies, and so for us as this 18-year-old guy, it was a great place to work, right? But all of the girls were always coming to me after work because I was selling weed out of my pocket. I would show up to work with a pocket full of dime bags of weed, and I was selling it to them, right? And so this guy was always giving me a hard time about all these girls coming up to me. So finally I had to tell him why they were coming up to me. So now he's there at the Elyria Memorial Hospital while I'm there with Daryl Campbell having a lobectomy, and he's joking about how he used to sell weed to all these girls, and all of a sudden Debbie walks up and goes, "Hey, Pastor Jim," and he goes, "What did she just call you?" And he's like, you're the guy that used to sell weed to all the servers, and Debbie's like, "You did what?" So once again, I have the memories of that guy, but that guy doesn't exist anymore. I'm not that guy. That guy's dead. I've been resurrected. What am I going to do with my resurrection? Am I going to sit around and wait and die and hope to God there's a heaven after this? Or am I going to live the resurrection now and trying to make heaven come on earth as it is in heaven? Because that's what we're called to do, and we're called to do something greater than Jesus did. Jesus came to give us the ability to build the kingdom, which is a great work. He died, buried, resurrected, all the beautiful things Jesus did. But we're supposed to be taking what he did and building upon it. And if we do that as a united body, as a body that says, I'm tired of living in division. I'm tired of living in these binary choices. I'm tired of living in the wrong and the right. I just want to live in one. And if we can do that together, then we can really begin to grow something special. And we can really begin to bring down the nations of the world. Not because the nations of the world are terrible, not because we want to destroy the USA, because it's not about destroying the country, but it's about destroying the worldly fabrics that weave all these things together, these binary choices, because everything is built upon who wins and who loses. Well, guess what? The Savior of the world lost. The greatest story told of all time is the story of a guy who lost. He died. And all the people who followed him died. Were beheaded or hanged. Some were skinned alive, some were boiled alive. Everybody who followed Jesus died. He lost the worldly battle. He lost the war. Maybe it's to teach us something. Maybe it's to show us there's another way to win. And maybe guns and knives and battles and arguments and fights isn't the way to win. Maybe the only way to peace is to choose peace. And you can't war your way to peace. The United States of America has done that. We've tried. If we can just win enough wars, if we can just be strong enough, if we can just beat enough evil people, there will stop being evil people. And every time we kill somebody evil, somebody new evil comes along. You can't war your way to peace. The only way to choose peace is to choose peace. And Jesus calls us to peace. Following God is supposed to end war. Right? We're supposed to be peacemakers. We're supposed to live in this non-binary existence of, I'm not going to go to war with you just because you disagree with me. I want to see you and say, oh, wow, I really appreciate the way you see things, even though it's different than the way I do. You're still my sister, and I still love you. How can we now go out into the world and change it together? Because you're going to have a different idea than I'm going to have. And maybe my idea for this time isn't the right idea, but maybe yours is. And then the next time, maybe it's going to be my idea. And then the time after that, it's going to be Loretta's idea. Because we're going to come to different times where it's like, how do we move forward? And I'm not going to know. But somebody else here might have the idea that's going to move us forward. And then the next time that happens, somebody else is going to have the idea that moves us forward. And it's not, I'm the king, I'm the greatest, it's no, all of us together. And all we're doing is following Jesus, because he's the king. He's the leader. He's the one who came to save us. And as long as we're following human people and elected officials, we're not going to be saved. Once again, in our eternity, we might go to heaven when we die, all that wonderful stuff, but we're still living in this world that's destroyed. Well, we're supposed to be saving the world. We're supposed to be changing it. All the prophecy of the Old Testament, all the prophecy in the New Testament and Revelation is all about the new heavens and the new earth coming here. It's about us restoring this planet, us restoring God's creation, us kicking Satan off of this territory. Read it all. It's all about what's going to happen here. And it's all about what we are going to do here. And we just sit around waiting for him to do it. Wonder why things are getting worse. Because we continue to buy into these binary. We continue to believe, well, I can't fix anything. I can't do anything. This is the way the world is. We're never going to do anything. It's never going to change. Right. Because we continue to believe it's never going to change. The only way things ever change is when people realize, oh my gosh, we can actually change things. And we can. We can. We just have to decide, I'm not going to follow the world anymore. I'm going to follow God. I'm going to follow Jesus Christ, who's in me, trying to lead me down that road. And this is what I always say. I was telling somebody this week. And I know it's noon and probably should go. We can finish this another time. But you guys have heard this. You guys have heard the story that in 2015, I'm sitting here in the church, and I'm wrestling my way through Galatians, and I'm realizing that everything that I'm reading in Galatians is going against everything that I'm preaching and teaching. And it was the passage where Paul says, if I'm to preach circumcision, why would I still be persecuted? That's the passage that wrecked me. And then it took me back to the passage, it wasn't or Galatians 4, I believe, or Galatians 2, and then Galatians 4, he says, if I'm to know, or now that I've come to know God, or rather be known by God. And I used to say, well, that's the day that God pulled up in the car, and I walked out, and he said, get in the car. And I said, where are we going? He said, I'm not telling you. So how are we going to get there? He goes, I'm not telling you that either. And I said, what happens if I don't get in the car? Nothing. You'll go on. You'll have a successful ministry. Your church will grow. You'll be fine. What happens if I get in the car? Everything. And I got in the car. The problem is while I've been in the car, I keep grabbing the wheel. I keep thinking, you know what? I know where we're going now. God's in the passenger seat. Let me drive. And I end up in the wrong direction. And so now as I'm fighting it, I met with a lady Thursday. Her name's Martha Campbell. She's a nun. She used to be a nun. She's just an amazing little lady, very smart lady. And I don't know why I'm meeting with her. I just called her out of the normal and said, hey, can we meet? And she said, yeah, because I'm getting that itch. Like, I need to do something. My motto for this year is I'm not doing anything, right? But I'm getting that itch. I need to do something. And so I told her the whole story. I explained everything to her, and she says, you do know waiting is active. Doing nothing sometimes is doing everything. And it was like, oh, that's why we met, because you're just here to remind me that I'm not supposed to do anything. I'm not supposed to get in the driver's seat again. Because right now I'm wanting to get in the driver's seat again. Because I got people like Karen who's calling me like nervous, like, where are we going? What's happening? And I'm not comfortable saying, I don't know. But I have to say, I don't know. But because she's nervous, but because I know Karen's vocal. Right? But not everybody's vocal. So she's getting nervous. She's going to vocalize that she's getting a little bit nervous about where the church is going. But maybe just because she's vocal, she's the only one vocalizing it, maybe she's not the only one thinking that. Maybe she's not the only one that's like a little bit nervous about the fact that Jimmy doesn't have a plan. So maybe I need to come up with a plan. Maybe I need to grab the wheel again. Maybe I need to drive the car for a little bit. Or maybe I just need to be reminded that no, it's okay to be nervous. It's okay to be scared. I got you. And that's what Thursday reminded me of. Okay, I'm okay. I don't need to get the wheel again. I'm good. Right? And so it's scary. But once again, you can't ever tell me that when Paul was following Christ and Paul was doing what he was doing, that he wasn't afraid. That when he was sitting in prison writing these letters, that he didn't have some kind of fear in him about what was going to happen. You can't tell me Peter wasn't afraid. Peter denied him. I don't know that guy. He did it out of fear. Right? And eventually he got over his fear and he died. It's a normal part of following Jesus because you're walking out into the unknown. I know the ways of the world. The ways of the world are known. If I wanted to conquer the world, I could conquer the world. I could run the world if I wanted to, because I know how to do it. I've studied all the great dictators. I've studied how they did it. I know how they took over. And I got the charisma and I got the ability. I could do that if I wanted to. Right? But that's not the way I'm supposed to do it. It's not what we're here to do. We're not supposed to continue to do things the way the world's always done it. I know how the world does things. I don't know how God does things. I can never explain how God does things or why he does what he does, or there's no rhyme or reason to God. I have no idea how to do it. Because I'm not supposed to do it. All I'm supposed to do is sit here and let him do it. And it's scary. It's hard. Right now, for the last 7 years, we've always had about $30,000 in our bank account for the church. There's always been $30,000, roughly. Correct, Darlene? That's usually about the cushion we have? We have $12,000 in our checking account right now. 12. It's scary. Diane, I'm all excited about the future of their church because things are going well. And then Diane slaps those financial reports on my desk, and I'm like, oh, I almost swore, sorry. Do that sometimes when I'm not up here, but those financial reports make me want to grab the wheel. You know, Darlene was like, yeah, things are going good. And then the next week she's like, yeah, I was wrong. that's just a 1 week thing. I'm sorry, I spoke too soon, right? But I can't be worried about those things. Rob God keeps telling me, no, man, you got to worry about that. I said, I can't. I can't be worried about finances. I can't be worried about direction. All I got to be worried about is trusting that God's got us. He's here. He's in him. He's in Loretta. He's in you. He's in Kathy. He's in me. He's here. All we got to do is get out of his way. And all I've done is continue to get in his way. And that's why we're where we're at. And so, yeah, it's scary. And yeah, it feels like it can't be done. Well, and that's what I would agree. And that's right. And that's what I would say is in the choices in the garden, there is a choice of a side.
That's why we're at where we're at now. But we still have that choice. We can't choose God's side. If we don't, then
Right.
in the beginning.
Right. Jesus came into the world to give us the ability to change sides. Right. Right. But what I would say and I completely agree with. And those are the only two sides. There's God in the world. But in the world, there's millions of sides. Right. Right.
We straight off now and now.
Absolutely.
But we have a pattern, and that's what we're doing.
Right. And so that's why I'm not saying that there are no sides at all, and I know that's not what you're saying either, but because there is that, we have one side to pick. And if we pick that side, there's no other sides. We're on God's side. That's it. There's no other parties, there's no other religions, there's just God's. And the other side, there's all sorts of choices we got to make. Yeah, right. And so it's easier to be on God's side because you have less choices to make, right? You still have to choose what you're going to wear today, but you don't have to choose anything else. And so, but that for me is recognizing that story of Adam and Eve. And true story, literal story, whatever, none of it matters. I'm in the garden right now, and I'm sitting there at that tree with the serpent, and I have to make a choice. Am I going to continue to eat from this tree, or am I going to stop eating from this tree and go eat from all the rest of them? And all of us have that choice, and all of us have, and this is why, I'll say it again, I'm not a universalist. I never have been a universalist. I never will be a universalist because every single one of us has to make that choice for ourselves. We're in the garden. What choice are you making? It was made for us the first time. Jesus comes into the world to give us the ability to choose for ourselves. Because prior to Jesus, you don't have the ability to choose. You're eating from that tree because that's all you know. Jesus came into the world to say, hey, guess what? I'm going to give you the choice again. You can either continue to eat from that tree, or you can come eat from mine. And so, we're really long now. But these ones always go long. These ones always go long. But it's fun. And like I said, I love hearing from you guys. I mean, we can keep going on. Look, it's Father's Day. I got nothing to do the rest of the day. I can do this all day, as many of you know, right? Okay, write them down. Yeah. Well, don't. I mean, Yeah. Well, we used to do this more. I tried to do this all the time, and then people got mad. But with all of this, once again, and I know we all maybe see things a little bit differently, and that's okay. I love you guys. I love this church. I love the fact that I'm able to do this. You know what I mean? Like, not every pastor has the ability to show up and say, I don't have anything to say today. So I love the fact that you guys have always given me the freedom to show up and say, what do you all want to talk about? You know, like I said, I really feel that our church is special. You know, our people are special. A small church in Grafton, Ohio can change the world. You know what I mean? I really do love everybody here, and I love being the pastor of this church. And I want this church to keep going. And I want this church to be around, and I believe that it is. And that's something that Karen and I talked about last week. Like, you know, we're not willing to let it go. You know what I mean? But part of that is also letting it go. I got to let it go, and let God say, I'm going to keep the doors, because I could keep the doors open. Right? I can go back to being funny and cracking jokes and entertaining people and filling seats. I could do that. Or I can just say, you know what? God's going to do it.